Good morning, everybody. This is Mary Catherine, and welcome to my own little house. Well, today we're looking again at this brown fleece, and I decided to discipline myself. Yesterday, I washed 2 more batches of this fleece. I still have a lot more to go, but I really wanted to see if I could wash it in such a way that I didn't felt it. I wanted to be as gentle as possible with both the temperature of the water and how much I handled it. And so we're going to look at that first before we look at the fleece that I ended up with after it dried overnight. Okay, folks, it's crunch time with the fiber. Now this is what I have left. This is quite a bit. It should certainly be enough to finish my sweater. So here is one of the locks. They're very beautiful. You can see they've got lots of fun curlicues, but this all softens up because it's full of lots of lanolin and dirt. Now, the base of these locks are not felted here. You can see they separate very well. So something I'm doing in the washing process is causing them to felt. I thought it might be temperature, but one of you, I don't know, was it Diana? Somebody said that they didn't find that temperature caused felting, but that how you handled the fleece causes it. So today, I'm just going to try to wash as much of this as I can, and I'm going to try to be extremely gentle, mostly letting it soak. And if it ends up not being as clean as I normally would use, I'm just not going to worry about that. I'm going to be more concerned with the condition of the fleece because I've got to finish this sweater, don't I? Don't you agree? Okay, so beautiful locks, lots of beautiful locks. I don't want lots of felted locks, though. They really are gorgeous. Look at all of them. And I'm just going to leave it there for like, I don't know, 10 minutes. I'd better not leave that there on the floor for Lucy to get into. That could be disastrous. So this is the first batch. I did wash and rinse it 4 times instead of the usual 3. The water still wasn't crystal clear or anything, but I think it was good enough. It does seem to be, this is wet now on my drying rack, it does seem to be separating. I'm looking at the dark especially, separating much more easily than, I'm not seeing any felting in this. Now the locks are still more stuck together, but I think that's just them being locks. I don't think that that's actually felted fabric. There's a lot of VM still in here. Look at the seed heads of the grass. And so when I card and pick and everything, I'm going to have to get a lot of this VM out, but it looks pretty big. I'm not worried about that. Like here's a clump of lock tips that need to be separated. But it's really the darker base tips that I was more interested to see how they are doing. And I think that my process this time has worked better. I really barely touched the fiber. Even when I was bringing it over here, I didn't really squeeze it out even. I rolled it up in a towel and let the towel absorb the moisture, and then just brought it in. So we're going to let this dry till tomorrow and see what we get. Well, look what I did today. I finished my socks. Yay! I'm super pleased with them. I think the left one is a little bigger than the right one. I'm not sure why, but it's not much difference, and they're very comfortable, I like the stripiness. I have never finished a pair of socks this fast before. I guess it's getting easier. All right, so here's the first batch I did. Now, I really barely touched this fleece when I washed it, and you can see it still has lots of VM. Okay, so one big difference you see here is that these tips are still very intact, very tight, very, very tight curled. Usually when I wash this stuff, when I press it and clean it, they tend to, the tips, as they're getting clean, tend to come apart more like this, okay? And they'll do that as I card. But in that gentle washing, they really stayed very, very tight, and there's lots and lots of them, okay? And that is, of course, as you would expect, that's where the VM is concentrated. So let's look at some of this. You can always find the tips, and then you just work your way down to the base of the lock. This is where I got felting before. Now, I'm not getting any felting on this. Even that one looked like it was maybe a little bit dense, like you can, that's a little bit connected. I could probably still work with that. But this came apart very nicely. If I had handled this just the teeniest bit, that whole lump would have been felted right there. And I would have had to snip that off, which that just takes extra time. It's not really the loss of fiber that bothers me in having to snip it off. It's just the getting out the scissors and cutting away this fleece that you've worked so hard to get to the spinning stage, and then right as you're carding it, you're cutting it off. See, here's another good example of very intact tips and unfelted base. Now you can see how it's wanting to come together, but it will still come apart. And when I card that on my hand carders, it'll come apart. Okay, I'm encouraged by this. I would like to hope that the two batches I did, I have, let me see if I can back you up a little bit. Yeah, so this is what I've got here. It fits into one of my smaller tubs, the one, my favorite one to wash with. And then I have another amount this much again. Boy, I would like to think that this, combined with the almost two bobbins I have that I'm about to ply together, might be enough to finish the sweater. Let me just take a second to remind you of how far I have to go on this sweater. Okay, so here is the sweater. Let me get my painting stuff out of the way. I haven't done any kind of placket on it, and I haven't finished. I'm going to finish the neck edge on this one. I kind of didn't do that on my last sweater. I don't know why. Why did I not put a nice ribbing around the edge? But I'll be doing that on this one, and I'll figure out what I want to do on the placket. So you can see I've got part way down, I've got underneath the bust, but I really want a good bit more, obviously. This is not going to be a short sweater. And the sleeves only go just like at the base of the bicep, really there at the armpit, the base of the bicep. So there's really quite a bit more to go. All the rest of the sweater will be in the dark. I have very little left of this, the nut brown roving. Boy, this has been a sweater a long time in the making, hasn't it, friends? Oh, my goodness. Boy, do you ever wonder if it's worth it? I mean, I could probably go to the hospice store and pick up a sweater for $5, or I could, order one online for, I don't know. It'll be very sturdy and warm, but we really just do it for the fun of it. And that's why when something ends up being no fun, like felted fiber, it just brings you to a standstill because you're only doing it because you enjoy the fiber work. And if the fiber work is not enjoyable, the sweater is suddenly not worth it. Isn't that terrible? But true. Okay, well, I've still got the needles on it. So this is where that is. I think I'll probably finish the body since the needles are already on there, and then I'll work on the sleeves later. All right. Will I wear that this winter? For the 3 weeks of winter that we have here? That is a very good question. I'm being so gentle with this fleece in the washing that I haven't even had to wear gloves yet because I'm barely touching it. I'm stirring the soapy water gently with a spoon to get no bubbles, and I'm just holding this to let it drain out. I'm not even pressing it down with my hand. This is now the second rinse, and so I'm just going to let it sink in there. Just gently do this. I did look at a lock a minute ago, and at the dark end, it's nearest the sheepskin, and it didn't look like it was felted, so that's good. All right, well, I'm going to chug on carding this fleece, and hopefully this will be a pleasant carding and a quick spin. I'm on my third pass on this first little bit of carding. You know, it's interesting, the tips were more compact, and they weren't felted, but just harder to get apart than the base of the locks were. And it seems to be carding very nicely. There's the bottom card this time. Here's the top card. You can see there's just a few little, that's a tip. And that's a tip. Very little VM left in. All the VM in this seems to be just little pieces of grass, which are very dry at this point. Okay, so I think this one's just about ready to put into a rolag. Here's 3 little rolags. Let's see how they do. It's doing very well. We are almost to the end of this bobbin of single. There's just a little bit left at the end, and so I'm going to make one more rolag by flicking the tips with this to open them up some and get some of that VM out of the tips, and then and see if I can get done with this single, and maybe I can ply today. Yes. After you've carded for a while, some of the VM tends to come to the outside, and it's easier to get than if you try to pick it out beforehand. Some of the tips break off on this fiber because they're just old or damaged, or I don't know if this sheep was left to not be sheared for an extra year or something, but the tips, they're not all broken, but there's some. I've also found that if I have a spot that's a little knot like this, a lot of times if I dig to the center of it, what I find is a piece of VM that has kept it all together. Now this one wasn't that way, and it looks like the tips aren't going to break off on that one. That's good. Okay. And we're going to keep on with at least one more, and perhaps two more passes on the cards before we, let's see, there's a tip that broke off. And here's a clump. Let's see what this one is about. This one is a real clump that broke off. But a lot of the VM, if you card it well, a lot of the VM will fall off onto your lap, which is the reason I have this white towel. It's really got a lot of VM on it now. Okay. Now I'm doing, I don't know what you call it, a very fluffy type of carding. I saw an elderly, you know, Scottish or Irish or something man doing this one time, and he just took big wads of wool and stuck it on his cards. He was not at all concerned with keeping all the fibers going in one direction, because that's not the kind of spinning he wanted to do. He wanted a lot of loft and air, so he was leaving lots of, you can see here in the middle. Now that's one that's got some VM in the middle. I can feel it. Here's another big piece. See, a lot of these tips, sorry to say, not really. They're the cause of some of the trouble. And some of the VM I'll pick out when I put it into the roll lag. I'll be able to see it, or I'll pick out as I'm spinning it. You really don't want any little pieces of hard grass sticking up in your sweater at the end. You see how this one is right here on top. So is this one. Now this doesn't bother me too much to have to mess with the VM, because this is what it's like to work with dirty wool that you cleaned yourself. If it has VM in it, it's nobody's fault but my own. But I did a very gentle cleaning, as I said, so this, and that's some second cuts. So is that probably. This is extremely soft fiber, very nice to the touch. This was I think they told me this was a Shetland or Shetland cross. Okay. Now there's a lot of fiber in there. I have an old hat pin that belonged to my husband's grandmother, and sometimes I come and do this, because you'd be amazed at how much fiber is stuck in your cards that you can use. Just stick it right there on your, oh, there's a piece of VM in there. Sometimes they're also just little lighter colored hairs. They look like very thin VM, but they're actually little pieces of wool. Okay. There's a second cut. The second cuts, I think, really do give you nasty little balls in your spinning. So I try to, and these ones are darker because, of course, they're near the skin, and so they're going to be from the darker wool. That is brown. It's almost a gray brown. Okay, we'll see if that will fill out this bobbin. I think I've just about gotten to the end of this bobbin, and I'll apply it with this bobbin. They don't look quite even, but boy, I'm ready to be done with this stage. So we're going to go ahead and ply. If I have a little single left over, I'll do a little bracelet ply at the end, and that'll tidy it up. Then, as you know, I will steam it and thwack it. Oh, it'll be on my, I'll put it on my nitty knotty, and then steam it and thwack it and let it dry, and it'll be ready to do some knitting at last.